So James, I can see in front of us several different types of poles. Can you tell me more about these, what to use?
Yeah, sure, Trev. I think you can basically group pole fishing into two different disciplines. You've got long take-apart poles and you've got shorter whip poles. So, for example, this pole here is a 10-metre take-apart pole, okay? So the joints fit together over each other, okay?
Yeah.
And the pole is obviously hollow, so to transport the pole, you put the sections in the butt. So that keeps them all together nice and safe. Yep. So that's your take-apart pole, and this one's 10 metres long.
Okay.
Then you've got the whip poles that are typically telescopic, like this one. And they typically have a softer carbon tip or solid tip. So these kind of poles are for using rigs when you want to be using the same length of line as the pole. So effectively you're fishing very, very quickly, but also very, very simply. And that's why we call them a whip, because they're easy to whip the rig in and out.
Okay, I was going to ask you that question because it just seems to me a whip.
Yeah,
you know,
it sounds a bit strange, but I'd say typically whips are available up to 8 metres, but typically you want to be fishing between 3 and 5 metres, particularly as a beginner. But whip fishing is something that we can look at today and is a very, very effective form of catching small fish quickly.
Okay, James, you were saying about the long pole and you were saying like 10 metres, 12 metres.
Yeah.
What materials are you using? Because that, to me, a 12-metre pole could be really heavy and cumbersome.
Yeah, sure. Well, basically you've got to think that the pole's material is depended on by the price. So the cheaper poles, you know, the entry-level poles, such as this Alpha X, are made from glass or glass and carbon composite. So you're going to find that on the cheaper poles, they're going to be limited in terms of usable length. Probably 8 metres is the absolute maximum that you're going to be able to fish with effectively. But for beginners and for people on a tight budget, people getting into pole fishing, you know, this sort of pole is very, very effective and very, very simple to use. As you go up in price, you start to find the poles made from carbon fibre. Now carbon fibre is obviously very, very lightweight, but also very, very strong. So it means that the poles can be developed and designed to much longer lengths, like up to 16 metres as a maximum. So it all depends on the quality of the carbon used to help increase the lightness, the strength, and also the rigidity of the pole. Because as you can imagine, as a pole gets longer and longer, if it's not very stiff, it bounces around a lot and it's very difficult to fish with. So basically you get what you pay for. The more money you spend, the lighter, the stronger and stiffer the pole is.
Okay, I can understand that, and if, obviously if it's bouncing, it negates the advantages you've already said about presentation and such.
Absolutely.
Okay, where do we go from here?
Well, what I'd like to just explain is, when we're looking at the take-apart poles, about the different tips that we use. Because you'll notice that for most pole fishing, we use in conjunction with an elastic shock absorber. Okay? Because if you think about it, you haven't got a reel to give line if you hook a bigger fish. And as hopefully we'll find today, on a lake like this, you can be catching small fish, but you can also be catching bigger fish very, very efficiently with a pole. So I just wanted to explain that a pole, particularly a take-apart pole like this, comes with a hollow tip, which enables you to thread the elastic through to a bung and have the elastic as a shock absorber built into the pole.
Okay, so that's your clutch, essentially.
Yeah, like on a drag on a reel to give line, the elastic in a pole will enable you to land big fish and also prevent the line or the hook from pulling when you strike.
Okay.
So that's a hollow pole on a take-apart, and I just wanted to quickly emphasise again about the flick tip on the whip pole we talked about. So here you've actually got a solid length of carbon in this case, which acts as your shock absorber, but you haven't got as much shock absorber capability as with the elastic. So just as a broad statement, a whip pole or a pole for fishing to hand is typically used for smaller fish.
Yeah.
When you're going to be catching a mixed bag of fish, smaller fish and bigger fish, then you want to go for a take-apart pole used in conjunction with elastic.
Okay, so I could perhaps see the whip. I've had occasions on the river when there's been bleak on the top.
Yeah.
That would be a good use of a whip pole?
Absolutely. For catching small fish efficiently and quickly, you can't beat using a whip or pole to hand.
Okay, excellent. So, where do we go now?
Well, another thing I wanted to mention was you'll notice on lots of poles that you buy and see advertised, you actually have an elastic rating on the pole. And this is all to do again with the composition of the pole and the design of the pole. Some poles are very, very strong and you can use very heavy elastics for catching big fish. I mean, like seriously big carp now. And you can see that this pole is rated from a size 6 up to a size 14. So that means, quite simply, you can use, it's recommended to use an elastic between a 6 and a 14. Just quickly to understand, elastics are available in different strengths. So that's why we have to balance the correct elastic to the pole that you're buying. So that's a very important consideration to think about.
And I suppose you'll be telling me the difference between, like a six is more as a lighter elastic, and the heavier the number, the stronger the elastic?
The higher the number, the stronger the elastic.
Okay.
And then finally, just to mention, again relating to the take-apart poles, is you can actually buy different top kits. Now the top kit typically is the top 2 or 3 meters of the pole. And as you'll see when we get into more detail, it's an advantage to be able to have different rigs set up, even to approach one peg like we've got today. So you might have some rigs for smaller fish with lighter elastic, lighter line, and you might have some rigs with heavier elastic and heavier line. So you can cover different areas in your swim, but also you can target different fish. So I think that's really important to mention, that the different kits are available are match kits, which is this one, which typically you'd use up to about a elastic rating of a 12, which normally has a thinner tip and a thinner diameter to enable a bit more finesse, against a power top, which is made from stronger carbon to accommodate the strong elastic, but also the diameter of the tip is greater. So it's all being geared up correctly to balance to the elastic and the strength that you need to use. So that's top kit. Okay,
I mean, it's becoming a lot clearer to me now, and I can understand that by having those, you can, say suddenly you get some carp move into the swim, you're ready to go straight away. You mentioned like a 12 elastic and all these different numbers. A 12 elastic, what sort of fish size would you be perhaps thinking of catching on that?
It's a bit like with a rod and line. Of course you can land a huge carp, like a 20-pound carp, on a 1-pound hook length and a 20 hook. It's going to take you a hell of a long time to get it in. For a 12 elastic, that's going to be typically used for fish between 2 to 8 pounds.
Okay.
So it's actually a very versatile elastic. It's soft enough for the smaller fish, but got enough power and reserve to hook and land a bigger carp. Over 8 pound, then if you're catching those sort of fish consistently, then you want to up the elastic and up your gear accordingly so you can hook them and play them much more efficiently and quickly.
I'd really like to be catching 8 pound plus fish consistently. So,
well, I can't promise that, Trev, but we'll give it a go anyway. I think what we'll look at next is terminal tackle. So we'll go into a bit more depth about the specific terminal tackle and rigs related to pole fishing.
Starting to understand this now, James, so take me on.